The good news is this. Let's hear it from Jon Morosi, MLB Network. Okay, we haven't had a lot of Padres trade rumors. We've had so many over the last 3 or 4 off seasons and in season under Peter Seidler's ownership and AJ Preller's guidance. There's been all these rumors and all these trades. It's been such a quiet offseason. Like, let's be honest with each other. But Jon Morosi had a really interesting tidbit today on Blue Jays starter Alek Manoah, MLB Network. Take a listen to this.
What does this mean for Alek Manoah? And you see him there. Manoah's still right now in the fifth spot of the Jays rotation because we're not sure, again, if Yadiel will be able to pitch for a full 6 months in the rotation. And yet, we do know there have been rumblings of trade conversations between the Jays and other teams this offseason. The Padres are one team that I would mention because Manoah was able to come back at least after a really tough start to the year. Get sent to the minor leagues. He was able to work his way back to the major leagues. Did not have a ton of success. But in my experience watching him, it wasn't as though he was non-competitive. He just didn't have as good stuff in 2023, and he was often a pitch or two away from getting out of jams, but things tended to snowball for him. So I think a team like San Diego, big ballpark, National League, different venue, different change of scenery entirely, I can see that type of a situation being very advantageous for Manoah. That being said, the Jays are not just going to give him away because he does still have value to him, value to the organization.
Jon Morosi, Alek Manoah. So let me just say this. Okay. So the good news is I'm excited to hear the Padres tied to a potential starting pitcher. I really am. The bad news is, and Morosi was trying to spin this thing, Alek Manoah was among the worst starting pitchers in baseball last year. The good news is he was really good, Jim, in 2021 and 22. His numbers last year were so out of whack, you wonder what on earth was going on last year with Alek Manoah. They were that bad compared to where he was the prior 2 years.
Yes.
Right? I mean, his numbers were terrible. I don't even have them in front of me. They're so bad, I don't even want. He had like a 6+ ERA in 19 starts last year.
We talked about this around the Soto trade.
Okay.
Where we were talking about best case scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned a best case scenario if at the end, when the dust settles with the Juan Soto deal, if you ended up somehow with a frontline starting pitcher like a Corbin Burns.
Right.
Not going to happen, but just hear me out.
Oh, you were saying it's part of that Soto transaction.
Yeah, like when the dust settles,
yeah,
if
I
you
got you.
had to trade Soto and then flip somebody and then get this guy. And then,
I agreed with you.
You would have to make multiple moves for this to happen. But I said, if the dust settles and you have to trade Juan Soto, which they did, and you ended up with a legitimate starting pitcher, more preferably frontline starting pitcher,
mm-hmm.
and a guy like Alek Manoah, who you could potentially get on the cheap because of some maybe character issues and his horrible bad year last year. I think if you're a Padres fan, you would look at that as, okay, that I could make that into a positive because you get him with Ruben Niebla.
Yeah.
Which is what I feel like this franchise is doing is, all right, we're going to get as many pitchers as possible. And Ruben, do your magic.
Yeah, take these reclamation projects. I don't know if Manoah is that, but take these guys off down years.
I would put him in a 100% reclamation project.
Because last year was that bad.
It was
awful.
So bad. And his journey throughout the season.
Wasn't he like in A-ball and he was all over the place, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had almost like a 6 ERA. He had a negative WAR. He was
awful.
It was an awful season from him. But why there's intrigue there, I think for a lot of Padres fans and for myself included, and maybe AJ Preller, is just a couple years ago, dude's an all-star.
Yeah.
And he's shown that he has it in him. So it's not like this guy's been in the big leagues for what, 6, 7, whatever, how many years he's been.
No, I think just 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And every year has been bad.
No,
and
he's had good
we
years.
can take him.
Yep.
Like, no, he's had some good years and he has shown some promise and he has been an all-star and he's been a guy that could be at the front of close to the front of your rotation. So for me, they need pitchers desperately. Not desperately, but they need pitchers bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like the rotation they have now, it's going to be walking a tightrope for the whole season if you just have that. So I think they could get him on the cheap. I don't think that it would cost too much considering of what year he had last year.
You're going to be shocked with what I'm about to say. If I'm AJ Preller, And what Jon Morosi just said, I think he's spot on. I'd be all in on this type of pitcher. Reason being, everything you said. Plus, he's under control for the next 4 years. He made sub $1 million last year. To your point, working with Niebla, he doesn't have to be an all-star pitcher like he was in 2022 or 2021. But if you can get him back to being serviceable, a back-end rotation piece, and you could do it for relatively cheap. Now, I don't know if you can, to be honest, Jim, because I just gave you some reasons. If I'm Toronto, I'm not just moving him for the benefit of just moving him or just to move him, because 4 years of control, 26 years of age, not making a lot of money. So, like, you're selling really low. Like, this is the opposite of selling on Hassan Kim. This is a little bit of like selling on Jay Cronenworth. So, like, are you willing to sell low and sell for pennies on the dollar on Manoah? And maybe it would cost more than that if you're the Padres, but I'd be willing to spend a little bit more. Yes, awful year, but change of scenery, young pitcher, under control with Niebla. This is the type of play. What's better to you, Jim? Making a trade, giving up prospect capital, paying him $1 million next year, or going out and getting one of those veteran starters we talked about yesterday for $14 million a year?
I think with where they're positioned right now, trading a prospect for a pitcher like Manoah.
I agree.
I look, spending the $12 million on a pitcher in hindsight, or in the grand scheme of things, or 12, 14 million, it's not a lot. It's the going rate.
I agree.
It's what the going rate is for a quality starting pitcher. Problem is they don't have 12, 14, 15 million dollars to spend right now on just one guy, I feel like. So with that being said, you got to pivot, you got to move, and it has to be creative. Like, AJ has to be as creative as he's ever been. Do I think he's been that this offseason? No. The Soto deal, you could argue, yes, because he got a bunch of pitchers, but we still have to wait and see what those guys turn out to be. They could turn out to be great. And you could look back at the Soto deal and be like, oh my God, I can't believe the Yankees did that.
Yeah.
Or you could look back at the Soto deal and be like, okay, this guy had a 4 ERA with you. This catcher couldn't hit with a lick. And these two other pitchers didn't do anything. And Drew Thorpe never developed. And while Juan Soto won an MVP with the Yankees.
All possible.
Both things could happen.
Yep.
Hopefully, if you're the Padres, the one where Michael King turns into closer to a frontline starting pitcher, and you have Drew Thorpe developed through your system, another quality arm that they have there, Brito, Vasquez, Higgy behind the plate's a solid backup. You hope those things happen, but we don't know until we actually see it. But with Manoah, if you trust Ruben Niebla as much as you say you do, and you think with the new system they have at Point Loma, I saw Joe Musgrove the other day working there.
Yeah.
They were adamant in making sure that they had, Ruben Niebla hired before Bob Melvin a couple of years ago. They were very outspoken as like, no, Ruben Niebla is definitely coming back on this roster. Or on this coaching staff. It was whoever the manager. Okay, it's fine. But Ruben Niebla, he's coming back. So if you trust Ruben Niebla as much as you say you do, with fixing guys, and he's shown he can do it. He's done it with Josh Hader when he was struggling when he came here. He turned Michael Wacha into a really quality starting pitcher. I think he turned, Seth Lugo is a guy that was never a starter, and he came here and he became a really good starter. So you trust Ruben Niebla. I put Manoah with him, see what happens. And hopefully if you trade for him, you aren't trading big time capital prospects, because I don't think it would take that to get Manoah.
Well, I would say this. The one thing you need to be careful with Ruben Niebla, even if he is a pitching whisperer, is to believe that he can turn every pitcher around. Because that's probably fool's gold. Like, all of a sudden, we're just going to go get the Manoahs of the world. We don't need to spend money on players like Snell and Darvish and Musgrove. You need a combination, right? You can't just have reclamation projects and turn to Ruben Niebla and make everything work. And I would also say this. This may be a very measured type move. We don't know if they're going to acquire Alek Manoah. I was about to say Alek Manoah or not. But again, a couple of off seasons ago when Peter Seidler took over ownership, the way they struck with Snell, Darvish, Musgrove trades within a period of weeks was truly incredible. That's not what we're going to experience here in the days and weeks ahead. You wouldn't believe, based on what they've done so far. Matsui, trading away Juan Soto, and then Jon Morosi reporting that, hey, Alek Manoah is the type of fit that could work for the Padres considering the situation that they're in. I'm understanding of that. I'm not out here hoping they're trading for a frontline starter or they're going to spend, $100 million on Blake Snell or Josh Hader. You got to come to grips with where they're at. And based on where they're at, what can they do? And all that considered, that's where Alek Manoah to me makes a lot of sense.
It really does. You have to be creative in a sense that you do things with some risk because that's where you're at. And Alek Manoah, I think would be a risky move.
The risk would be the prospects you gave up. Because if you got him for cheap and he didn't pan out.
Well, I think also the risk is if you happen to get Alek Manoah here, what if he is still the guy from last year and you can't fix him? Then you may have put too much eggs in that basket where you hope that this guy could really contribute for this team, and you're putting too much.
Like if you pencil him in as your number 4 or 5 starter, and the thing completely unravels.
And then where you go from there if he doesn't,
right?
You're like, oh crap, we missed on that one.
So you have to have more options than just Manoah. You're saying in that hypothetical.
Yeah, you do, because there's so much risk with. Hey, you can turn this guy into a good pitcher again. Like, what if you can't?
Right.
I have faith in Niebla, which I know AJ Preller in this organization does more than anybody, and he's proven that he can do it. But what if he can't? Not everybody can be fixed. Not everybody. It's the truth. And so while I trust Ruben Niebla to, and the guys around him to hopefully, if they had to make this trade, or if they did make this trade to turn this guy around, I would be on board with it for sure. I think it's a move that makes more sense than going out and giving a guy $15 million as a starting pitcher.
What on earth happened in 2023? The way I remember it, and correct me if I'm wrong, not only was he an all-star in 2022, he was like a top 5 pitcher. And in 2023, the wheels completely fell off.
Yeah.
And what were the circumstances surrounding it? Was it health? Was it injuries? Was it mechanics? Was it mental? I know he went into camp heavy.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of things, but one thing that does kind of concern me as far as a character standpoint, if you're looking at
what was
Alek
the
Manoah,
character thing?
So he got demoted because he was
ineffective,
pitching horribly,
right?
And he never reported to AAA, and that was a situation that was a problem. And if you get demoted to AAA and you never report down there, like that's a problem. It's an issue,
right? And didn't he spend time in like A-ball last year?
He never, he might have, but he wasn't throwing bullpen sessions. He wasn't doing the work necessary. Maybe he is kind of like Jon Manoah, because Jon Manoah, when he was here as a Padre, admitted after the fact that he didn't really try that much.
But that's the type. What's interesting is that's the type of person I want in a new organization. You see, I want the guy that's willing to start over. He's a former first-round pick that throws 98. That's 26. That's the guy I'm willing to take a risk on. Like, there's way more upside potential there than signing a 35-year-old off the scrap heap with 2,000 innings on his arm for $15 million a year. I want the guy that can start over, work with Ruben Niebla, get to a pitcher's ballpark, and hopefully I can catch lightning in a bottle with. And I don't know if they're going to do it with Alek Manoah or not, but that's a really ideal candidate for me. He's under control for multiple years. He's coming off a down year. Give him a new scenery, and see if he can be what he was previously.
Yeah, you're not asking him to be your number one starter.
Musgrove or Darvish.
No, you need Musgrove and Darvish to be the number one guys.
Yes.
1A and 1B. You need it. If you don't get that type of performances from Darvish and Musgrove this season, good luck.
We're not going to be like, well, Manoah's got to pick up the slack and have a 2.1 ERA and win 19 games.
But the more options, the better. And it could be a situation where maybe the Blue Jays are viewing it like you said, this guy needs to change the scenery, and we're not going to ask for the moon for him because of the year he came off of. So not like whoever wants him has him, but we're not going to be asking for your like 5th ranked prospect in your organization.
Right.
So it's a very intriguing name. I've talked about him. We've talked about him since the Juan Soto trade. That was a name that we brought up months ago. And this team needs pitching. This team needs outfield depth. Not just depth, but actual starters. And we've said that the probably likeliest way to do that is through trades. Yeah. It's not going out and signing guys. If you sign Jurickson Profar, that means you're probably not signing to more than like a $3 million deal.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, you still have to look at making trades to upgrade your team. And if you're asking, well, who's out there that could be a guy that can get on a low level type of trade, Alek Manoah is a guy that I think that you could get for not a lot, and hopefully it's one of those diamonds in the roughs.
Dude, the more I read about this, and the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, I want Alek Manoah. As crazy as that sounds, He was their opening day starter.
Mhm.
He finished third in the AL Cy Young voting in 2022. I'm willing to look past 19 awful starts in 2023 and not reporting and coming into camp heavy. Former first-round pick that throws 98, that was third in the American League Cy Young voting in 2022. I'm all in, considering where the Padres are at today.
So are you cool with potential character issues with him last year?
What do I like to say? What do I, other than I used to work in minor league baseball? I'll tell you something.
Heavy as head towards the
I
ground.
love saying that, but here's another thing I like to say. The Padres aren't in the business of having good people. They're in the business of having a good baseball team.
What?
I know it's a fine line. And I don't know anything about this guy's character or if he's a bad person.
Because when you say, because I'm just saying,
but if he can help you on field,
but when you say things like that, then you're gonna get the people in the chat on Twitter,
Manny?
and they're gonna be like, "Well, if you say that, Jon, that means they should go out and get Trevor Bauer. That means they should go out
there's a
and
difference.
get Julio
No,
Urias."
that's fair, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a fine line. I'll give you a classic example of this, and I'm all for Manny Machado. I think he's done a lot more good than bad in his 5 years in San Diego. It hasn't been perfect. He may not be the perfect player you're building around from like an off the field perspective or a clubhouse perspective, but the guy flat out rakes when he's healthy, and he plays, and he's a great defender, and he leads with his play. So I'm not saying Manoah is Machado. I'm not doing the comparison, but what I'm saying is this. If Manoah can help you, he doesn't have to be the perfect humanitarian. If Manoah can help you on field, to me, I'm willing to take some chances, right? You got to think about it from that perspective. Like, it can't all be buttoned up and perfect, and every deal is a guy coming off a Cy Young caliber year. Some guys you're going to have to take a little bit of a risk on, and maybe Manoah is a guy that would be a good candidate for that right now.
Well, the character issues that I'm
what are the character
talking
issues?
about is, I don't know, giving a crap, like actually doing your
that's
job.
Where a change of scenery,
working hard.
Okay, but
practicing.
But that sounds like culture, Jim.
Oh,
but is this high school?
But how did he have
That's
a
right.
2.2 ERA and finish third in the American League Cy Young voting? I'm saying in 2022.
Then how?
Just go find that guy.
No, I know. Go find that guy.
Right.
But also, you saw what happened when he faced major adversity, and he wasn't that 2.0 whatever ERA guy. And I'm not going to say he quit, but he didn't do the work, and it showed on the field. It seemed like he was lazy. It seemed like when he was, kind of not put in his place, but hey, you're not pitching well, so we need you to go down to the minors. And he said, no, I'm not doing that. That's the character issues I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's not bad.
If you're going to be coming here, and if you don't perform, you're going to have to take criticism well. You're going to have to be like, okay, I'm making a bunch of money, and if I'm not performing well and they're going to send me down to AAA to work on some things, I can't be like, you know what? I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to do my bullpens. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that.
Maybe he's learned his lesson from 2023. I don't know. I don't know Alek Manoah, but maybe he's learned his lesson. But again, from a risk-reward perspective, this is the type of player, in my opinion, the Padres should be in on.